We've got more experts, more knowledge, more voices, more research, more tools, more technology than ever before in the health and wellness space. Yet we are sicker from a mental, physical, spiritual, emotional side than ever before. We are seeing an average age of death decline in both males and females for the first time since 1920. We're not in a great space from a health and wellness side. And I think if you look back to it, if you take mental, physical, spiritual, emotional health, people say, oh, we've got an obesity problem. People say, oh, we've got a mental health problem. People say, oh, we've got an identity problem. No, you just have a universal health problem.
Your work on holistic wellness is super out in front right now. And I'm kind of curious, how'd you kind of find your way into that field, before we jump into kind of what makes it special?
God, that's the answer. Because
all right, show's over.
Yeah, it's done. Period. But no, it dates all the way back to just my childhood, and I just have had this deep understanding of the body that really doesn't make sense. Yeah. And I still remember the conversation. I was driving with my father. I was playing hockey. Obviously, in Canada, that's what you have to do. And
it goes alongside with walking, right? Skating and walking.
That's right. Skating first, and then you walk. It's all of a sudden, oh, how long has he been? The joke is, in Canada, you come up and you don't say, hey, how long has your kid been walking for? It's how long has he been skating for?
Yeah.
And so anyways, as I wanted to play in the NHL, I was 12 years old playing with 14 and 15-year-olds, and I wasn't playing very well. And my dad said to me, son, talent will get you noticed, but consistency will get you paid. And that, for some reason, that flipped a script in my mind. How can I be the most consistent version of myself? What does this mean? And I started to wear heart rate monitors and pulse oximeters and read medical journals and look at blood work and all of these things as a 13, 14-year-old kid, and really became obsessed with my habits, behaviors, and lifestyle around these data markers. And that ultimately just created my trajectory into my undergraduate degrees, my master's degrees, my postgraduate research, and then into my work through the NCAA and ultimately the National Hockey League. And I say all that to say that I was just greatly disappointed in what I learned through education, greatly disappointed what I saw at the highest level of elite sport and how they were treating health, wellness, and performance. And that created an opportunity for me to create a paradigm shift in a lot of these different industries of, hey, why don't we utilize this data to create personalized solutions instead of cookie cutter approaches and saying everybody has to eat this, everybody has to train this way, everybody has to recover this way, everybody has to supplement this way, but rather let's create really personalized constructs. And the crazy part about it is, yes, it is more work. Yes, it does take more time. Yes, it does take more intentionality, but that's the level of requirement to steward this earthly vessel that we're ultimately operating in and leaning in to execute our God-given calling. And so that was really, I think, the journey that brought me along, and through a series of experiences, education, mentors, and divine intervention, it led me to just break through and be a different voice in this space.
Yeah. Why do you think that as a nation, whether it's Canada or America for that matter, that people try to use a cookie cutter approach to everybody's lifestyle?
Because it's easier. To be honest with you, because it's easier. I mean, let's think about it. Even since starting Own It, I can't tell you how many people have come up to me and said, so how are you going to scale this? How are you going to scale personalization? How are you going to scale and reach the masses? Well, you should really just create a program, a system, a supplement. And I'm like, nope, not listening, because it's not the answer. We will then be left in the exact same position that we are now. We've got more experts, more knowledge, more voices, more research, more tools, more technology than ever before in the health and wellness space. Yet we are sicker from a mental, physical, spiritual, emotional side than ever before. We are falling. We are seeing an average age of death decline in both males and females for the first time since 1920. It is, we're not in a great space from a health and wellness side. And I think if you look back to it, if you take mental, physical, spiritual, emotional health, people say, oh, we've got an obesity problem. People say, oh, we've got a mental health problem. People say, oh, we've got an identity problem. No, you just have a universal health problem.
Mm-hmm.
And when we try to disintegrate these four entities of health,
Mm-hmm.
we ultimately see the disintegration of our health.
Yeah.
And that's what we're starting to see in this real world, because you can't create separation there. When you think about the physical health, that's our body. When you think about the mental health, that's our mind. You think about your emotional health, that's like your heart. And then you think about your identity and who and the desires that you have, that's your spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And these four entities cannot be dissociated. They cannot be moved apart. They cannot be treated in silos, because when you do, you move this. The definition of holistic is all or entire. Yeah. The definition of integrated, it means to make whole, to bring together.
Mm-hmm.
And the definition of healing is the exact same thing as integrated. It's to make whole. And so we've got all these people, like from functional medicine docs to RDs to therapists, and I'm not dogging on any of them. I think they're all great. I think they all have great intentions. But at the end of the day, when your functional medicine doc brings you in and says, oh, I'm going to run this gut biome test on you and take your blood and give you your supplements, and I'm going to ask you a couple questions about your childhood, and then sends you away and says, take these supplements and go through this gut healing protocol and everything's going to be better. That's not a holistically integrated approach, yet that's what they say they are.
Yeah.
Or your therapist sits you down and talks about all the trauma that you had as a child and these upbringings, and diving into the mental and emotional capacities that are here, but yet doesn't ask you about your eating habits, doesn't ask you about your training habits, doesn't ask you about your night and morning routines and how you're working. We're not treating it in a holistically integrated way. And that's why we continue to see the disintegration of our health in this world.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. I was working with somebody who's really gifted in, I would call it like energy / quantum / meditation, kind of like that realm. And one of the things that I thought was pretty profound is the ability for the physical body to trap a negative or a traumatic emotion.
For sure.
That then
actually gets integrated into your DNA strands.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about that the science of the integration piece there, because again, I feel like people don't do better because they don't really know any better. They're going to whomever, listening to whomever. They're not really thinking at it from a true holistic approach.
So I like to think about this as soul health. That's why I talk about this as soul health.
Mm-hmm.
And let's come back to we take a very spiritual and a very scientific approach to this, and we combine them together, because I think that's the way that we were intended to approach this. And so if we think about our spirit is ultimately our identity and our desires. Like, what do we truly want? Who are we? What do we see ourselves as? And from a very young age, we start to figure out who we are, from the environments we grow up in, to ultimately what we want in our life, to what our calling is, to what we're striving to do.
Mm-hmm.
And the people around us ultimately start to influence that. Is that in a positive way, or is that in a negative way? That's yet to be determined.
Yeah.
From there, it ultimately leads to your mind, which, let's go back to that. That's your mental capacity, right? So it's all of your thoughts and your beliefs. And those thoughts and beliefs continue in a conscious as well as a unconscious way to continue to keep moving. Obviously, the RAS, the reticular activating system in our brain, we don't have to be consciously thinking about something for our brain to continually be working and seeking this thought or belief, or making this come to reality. And those thoughts and beliefs ultimately create different emotions that get deeply integrated into our DNA strands, deeply get integrated into the health of our organs, the health of our body. So we could be in a negative headspace, and we ultimately have this feeling of heartache. It's not, our heart isn't actually aching, but it's an emotion that exists.
Yeah.
And then lastly, we start to feel that in our body, and it ultimately comes to reality through our habits, behaviors, and our lifestyle. And that creates soul health. Now, the world would tell us we have to attack the body. We have to come in from the ground up. You need a six pack. You need to lose weight. You need to cold plunge every day. You need to go in the sauna. You need to do breath work. You need to do this, that, and the other, and a laundry list of things. But yet we haven't healed our identity and our desires as to what we want first. And we wonder why these habits, behaviors, and lifestyle changes that we're making that are healthy, that are good for us, aren't sustainable, that we run into a brick wall, that we stop and we're like, man, why can't I get this? I'm good for a month, or I'm good for 6 months, or I lose 30 pounds and then I gain back 50. Why is this the case? And it's because we come at it from a bottom-up approach. We have to come from a top-down, which if we identify the spirit and what we're truly identifying with, and we heal that, we heal what came first, we know whose we are, we can ultimately renew the mind. And when we renew the mind in our thoughts and beliefs, it becomes this newfound space that purifies our heart. And that now then gets realized in our body. And I want to give you like this real life example. I had this billionaire come to me about 2 years ago, and he had been coming at it from a ground up approach, right? He's got 4 houses around the world. He's got a beautiful family, 5 kids, a beautiful wife, and takes 15 vacations a year, wants for nothing. Just a really good man. And he comes at, but he's gone through the yo-yo diets. He's gained 50. He's lost 70. He's gained back 55 of it. He doesn't sleep well. He's got sleep apnea. He's got a CPAP machine. He's gone to every holistic doc. He's traveled all around the world. And he's like, Justin, I need to lose 30 pounds. And let's just call this guy Tim. I said, Tim, what's on the other side of those 30 pounds that's not available to you today? And he wells up with tears in his eyes and he goes, I just want my son to be proud of me. And I want him to see me as a real life superhero, the way that I saw my dad as a real life superhero. And when we were able to pull that out of him, it immediately renewed his mind, because he was able to create a new identity and a new desire as to what am I doing this for? He cleaned up his spirit. He connected his spirit to what mattered. That renewed his mind, his thoughts and beliefs. His thoughts and beliefs weren't, oh, I don't have time for this anymore, or oh, I deserve this cheeseburger, or oh no, I'm just not going to eat it all, or I'm going to do this juice cleanse. No, he renewed his mind and the beliefs and thoughts that he had about who he was and what he was meant to do, which changed his emotions, which his emotions were no longer based off of this momentary glimpse of motivation, but rather it was true inspiration. It happened from the inside out, that he was like, this is what I'm doing. I am on this trajectory. I'm changing my life because this is what I'm aspiring to. And ultimately, it changed his habits, behaviors, and lifestyle. He started working out consistently. He started changing the way he ate. He changed his morning routine. He changed his night routine. He changed the people he was hanging around. He made the different choices at different holidays. He did all of these things. And now all of a sudden, fast forward 11 months, and it's October 31st. He's sitting outside in his black McLaren. He dressed as Batman. He's sitting in the driver's seat. His son doesn't know. His wife is filming, opens up the door. The son, 7 years old, also dressed as Batman. She opens the door. He runs out, takes a video. He's got this video going. Tim sitting in the driver's seat, this black McLaren, basically the Batmobile. And he sees, and he goes, Rylan, go see your dad. And he looks, and he goes, wow, Dad, you look like a real life superhero. And it's this holistic 360 journey of a guy 11 months ago who couldn't figure out how to get this health all together, a guy that was depressed, a guy that had everything you could ever want and imagine, but yet he had this gaping hole inside of him because he thought it was 30 pounds he needed to lose. But no, we'd had a holistic health issue. And when we are able to now wrap our arms around that and identify that and be true to that, 11 months later, this guy doesn't recognize the man he sees in the mirror in a positive way, and thus neither does his family. And what he desired most, it wasn't if he could get it. It was just if he was willing to put the work and effort and time structure in. And 11 months later, he's realizing it.
Wow. Dude, that's powerful. That really is powerful. I was just thinking too, as you were talking at the early part of the thought, I see a lot of hereditary limiting beliefs, emotional limiting beliefs. So anxiety ran pretty deep in my family for a long, long time. Okay. And I started looking at my family tree when I was trying to shake myself out of some stuff, and God had gotten a hold of my heart, and he's trying to change me from the inside out, and which is amazing. But then I got to thinking, it's like, why did my parents deal with anxiety? Why did their parents deal with anxiety? Why did their parents deal with anxiety? And the crazy part is if we're trapping emotions inside of our DNA strand, and when a child is created, you're passing along DNA, then until someone does something different, i.e.
Exactly.
the holistic approach, you continue for what I would refer to as a Christian as generational bondage, right?
Yep.
You're bound by the same things that held back the previous generations from amplifying or succeeding, if you will, right? So I'm curious to know, is there any more to the story about how the young man is now changing because the father changed?
So it's a great question. The uniqueness here is before the son never really hung out with his dad. We never was really around him.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, cool. Dad's doing his like business thing, and I'm going to go and do everything else. Well, now he's actually seeing his dad. He's got a beautiful facility in his home, and the son is down there watching his video game or playing his video games and watching his shows while cycling on a bike or walking on a treadmill, holding the side while his dad's working out. And so they're together, and they're doing this rather than not being together anymore and not having that deeper integration connection. And the uniqueness of the confidence that the young man has, the young boy has, versus what he had previously, it's amazing to see. You just see his eyes light up, and you see the connection and it's not just him; it's his other kids dynamic as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's the power that exists there. But even going back to what you said of choosing different and being tied up in your DNA and it literally being passed down and creating this breaking free of this generational bondage, it's real. And what I want to touch on is it takes one person to change it, to say, hey, I want something different. I have to choose different. And I want to, there was a article that came out, or a study that came out from Harvard that showed that if your parents are obese, that the children of that home are 80% more likely to be obese. Now, what I want to hit on here is just because your parents were obese, just because your parents have anxiety, just because your parents have this chronic illness, whatever it may be, does not mean that that is your sentence. Does not mean that that is what you have to do. And when they were explaining this study, they were saying, oh, because of this DNA stranding and this genetic predispositions, you are going to be obese. The answer is actually no. It has to do with the environmental factors that cause that. Was in a room with about 400 medical professionals. And I asked them a question. I said, how many of you are currently treating people for obesity? They put their hands up. I said, how many of you have them on medication for that obesity to help them get there? About 80% kept their hands up. I said, how many of you know the genetic predisposition that causes obesity? All their hands went down. There is not one. It is all about the environmental factors. It's about the choices, the habits, the behaviors, the lifestyle of how this holistically integrates together that ultimately creates an outcome. Yes, there are different factorial things that come in there. Yes, there are certain foods that react differently with certain people. Yes, there are certain genetic predispositions that either accelerate or decelerate your metabolism. But you can take somebody who is overweight. You can take somebody who is anxious. You can take somebody who doesn't sleep well. And you can change the habits and behaviors in a very personalized way to something that matters for them and create revolutionary change, transformational change in that individual. But it takes knowing what's happening to you. What is great for one person is not great for the other person. What the world tells you is healthy may actually be hurting you. And that is why we are so intentional and so driven and so motivated to create personalized change, personalized habit adjustment, personalized behavior modifications based upon what your body says, learning the language of your body, teaching you the language of your body for probably the first time, so it can empower you to really take control of your health again.
Yeah. Which I think is the definition of what you describe as own it. Like, in order for you to accept that change needs to happen, you have to own the fact of where you're at and also own the fact of where you want to go, right?
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It's really well said.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I learned from the best, right? So I'm curious, that there's so many different, when it comes to the mind, body, health, spirituality, when it comes to that connection, there's so many different branches off of that tree in many respects. Like, you want to bring cohesiveness to it, but there's always, kind of like you were describing there, there's, different segmentation. One doctor does it this way. One parent lifestyle is this, and the child does what they see out of the parent many times, right? It's kind of like the first time your child learns a curse word, right? Where'd they hear it from? Right. Kind of thing. So, there's so many different things that I know that you've applied to your life. What were some of the unique discoveries that you discovered about your own body, your own mind, your own heart, your own soul, that now that you've discovered them and applied your principles to them? Like, give me a little bit about before Justin and after Justin.
Oh man, how long do we have? So I'll take you back to 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old Justin. And you remember, you've got this kid at 12 years old who, talent will get you noticed, consistency will get you paid, started looking at all the data, looking at all the numbers. And I knew exactly what to do. I knew what I knew what I needed to eat. I knew how much I was training and what I was doing, but I had a deep fear of being fat and overweight. Why? Because I was fat and overweight from 7 to 10, 7 to 11, made fun of, teased, butt of all the jokes. And no matter what information I had, no matter how clear I was on what I needed to do, no matter what expert I spoke to and learned from, I had a deep fear of being fat and being made fun of and being teased. So as a 14-year-old, I went from 160 pounds to 90 and held 90 pounds for about 3 years as a 16-year-old boy. Extremely anorexic, extremely unhealthy. And at that point, someone would say, oh, well, you're depressed. You have a mental health issue. I still remember walking through the hospitals, and my parents took me there, and sitting in the eating disorder ward. And there was, I still remember just the feeding tubes going in and the IVs going in, and sitting and just looking at these people, skin and bones, just pale and gaunt. And I was like, I don't see myself in you. Like that's not what I am. I just have a deep holistic health fear of going back to being fat. And I just can't get over that hurdle. I know what to do. I know what implications to have. I'm still playing AAA hockey at this time. I'm still in the gym every single day. I'm still going to school and getting 4.0s, all of which the doctors said were miracles, because they couldn't imagine a kid losing 70 pounds over the course of a year and still being able to function, until I started to see kidney failure, liver failure. My skin was turning yellow. That somebody said to me, it was one of my coaches came up and he said, Justin, did you realize that you have the power to change all of this today? And when he said that, for some reason, something clicked in my mind that said, you're right. This isn't who I am. I can choose something different. I'm not tied to what is it that was just created. And literally, and again, by the grace of God and like the people that were put in, overnight, everything shifted, everything changed. Now, do I still have some of those ties in my mind and certain things from a body image issue and things that I kind of work through on a day-to-day basis? 100%. But now I've got the alignment of reattaching to my spiritual component that renews my mind, that purifies my heart, and now allows me to execute in a different way. that completely shifts and changes things. And I'll give another example is now going back probably 7 years, my late 20s, I was having just these massive gut issues. Couldn't figure out what was going on. Like anything I was eating, I went to a functional medicine doc. I was seeing some other people. And again, holistically integrated, right? If you guys are listening, I'm doing air quotes. I went in and they're like, okay, what's your past history? Let's take some questions. I told them about kind of growing up, anorexia, all this other stuff that existed. They did my testing and they said, okay, here's a 5-week protocol. We're going to clear up your gut, everything, and we're going to help you out and take it where it needs to go. Well, after 5 weeks, nothing happened. Came back in, retested. They said, hey, we need to do another gut cleansing protocol. I'm like, I don't think it's that. Well, we're going to do an elimination diet. Brought it down. I was eating soup and smoothies. And I was like, guys, at what point do we think that this just isn't right? Like, at what point do we think there's something else happening? Nope, this is just where it's at. Well, anyways, I continue to press. I go to a specialist just through, again, grace of God, get into a specialist through a connection we had in New York City, a gastroenterologist. I asked him to run a colonoscopy. He's like, bro, you're 27 years old. We're not doing a colonoscopy. I was like, no, please. Like, I can tell you there's something not right. Well, they run up, they do it. And I come to whatever it is, like an hour later, and he just comes, he goes, I am so sorry that you had to go through this like process, because if you hadn't continued to push, you wouldn't have seen 30, because there was 7 cancerous polyps the size of my thumb in my colon. Wow. And it was this aha moment of, wow, holistic health is real. Why? Because chronic stress, our body doesn't know the difference between mental, physical, spiritual, emotional stress. Chronic stress creates chronic inflammation. Chronic inflammation creates chronic symptoms that the world has told us are normal, that we should just live in. The headaches you have, the nausea you have, the gut pain you have, the inability to sleep, the energy fluctuations, the brain fog, those are all normal. That's what it takes to be an entrepreneur. That's what it takes to turn 40. That's what it takes to be a newly married person. Like, they're just told they're normal. Yeah. But chronic symptoms lead to chronic illness, and chronic illness is killing 71% of Americans. And that's that flow that I just strive to disrupt, because we live in this fake health continuum. On the far left, we've got death and disease. Like you're in the system. You've got chronic illness. You've got autoimmune disorders. You've got heart disease. You've got diabetes. You've earned these. These have come. Yeah. On the far right side, you've got true health. We all know what this looks like. You're vibrant. You're full of energy. You wake up in the morning. You're ready to go and do everything that you have listed off through the day. You come home at night. You're ready to play with your kids, drive them to where they need to go, connect deeply with your spouse, put your head on your pillow, sleep deeply, wake up, do it all again the next day. We know what that feels like, but yet 95% of us live in this disease-free, but symptom-full space of what I call fake health, and we justify it. And the longer you stay there, the smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller the window becomes to do something that's preventative, that's behavior changing, that's habit changing, that pushes you further to the right to true health, to when the window closes and it throws you immediately into death and disease.
Yeah, that's crazy. You know, I was dealing with so I'm a guy that likes to get up at 5 a.m. in most days. Okay. And have been doing it for a very long time. So much so that my body will wake me up at 5 or 6 a.m. regardless of an alarm clock. So I've been doing it that long. So it's kind of like become part of me. On top of that, one of the things that began to happen was I realized I started consuming more and more and more and more caffeine. And I was like, why am I doing this? And then I was like, well, it's because I'm continually feeling tired. Well, I would go to bed. I would get good rest. You know, I dream just when I'm just a dreamer. My mind never really shuts off, which my wife tells me is weird and unique, because apparently hers just is like blank and while she's sleeping in a dream. So it's completely different. But I had this, I started working with our good friend, Gary Brecka, and went through one of his assessments, blood stuff out the wazoo and all kind, his entire regiment. And they quickly realized that one of the things that I was struggling with at the time was incredibly low testosterone. Now I'm in my late 40s, so that's kind of normal for kind of like, your testosterone drops as you age.
Sure.
The other thing that they discovered was my red blood cells were so high. And a byproduct of having very high red blood cells, outside of, if you don't take care of it, liver failure, is this feeling sluggish and tired all the time. And, one of the things that they did at the physical level, and they keep in mind, I'm an avid prayer. I'm an avid meditator. It's not uncommon for me to turn on worship music or Hertz music or something to kind of chill myself out, get myself into a steady state and stuff like that. But one of the things that they're doing every quarter now is I'm doing therapeutic phlebotomy, is I guess the technical term for it, where they go and drain part of my blood.
Basically blood dumping.
Yeah, And I was really surprised that like the moment it did it, within 24 to 48 hours, my energy level returned without caffeine. So I think there's all kinds of these little nuances like you're talking about. It's holistic. It's not one size fits all, because my wife's red blood cells are fine. But she deals with different health issues. You know what I'm saying? So it's like,
totally.
If I'm listening to this and like, look, I love everything Justin's saying. I want exactly what he's talking about. I want the fullness and the fullness of wellness and all that kind of stuff. Maybe I've got some stuff that's chronic in my family, and if there's no one size fits all, and maybe I shouldn't be doing the keto diet or the paleo diet or whatever. Like, where do they start?
Yeah.
Like, what would you have them start with? Right, given everything's so specialized.
It's a really great question. And for anybody listening, the first thing it always comes back to is understanding the language of your body. Mm-hmm. And the language of your body is heart rate variability. Now, a lot of people have probably heard of it. It's becoming like this fad, mm-hmm. like a lot of things have been. I've been looking at HRV since 2004. Mm-hmm. And it's literally been the foundation to everything, because the best definition I've come up with for heart rate variability is it's the language of your body communicating with you how you're adapting to stress and strain. Mm-hmm. Now, the key with this is really important to know that your body doesn't know the difference between mental, physical, spiritual, or emotional stress. And if we go back to what I said previously, chronic stress creates chronic inflammation, creates chronic mm-hmm. illness, creates chronic symptoms, creates chronic illness. Now, if we can have a metric, an understanding, a KPI that tells us, hey, this is where you are today, mm-hmm. now we can start to understand certain behaviors and certain things that we need to actually do and engage in. So many of us don't have solid behaviors. There's 8 controllables that really impact and move the needle for heart rate variability. Mm-hmm. Those are exercise, nutrition, hydration, sleep, mindset, environment, self-care, and immune function. Mm-hmm. So these 8 controllables, there is some habit. We have a list of about 15 in each one of them, mm-hmm. that if you're not doing and can't give yourself a check mark for each of these 8 controllables and say, hey, my life is dialed in this area, mm-hmm. then there is no reason to go and start leaning on all of the supplementation and all of the IV therapies and all of the peptides and all of these advanced tools and technologies that are positioning themselves as a silver bullet to solve the problem. Because all that does is it ends up being, the guy who has 2 glasses of wine every night wonders why he can't sleep well and continues to gain weight and has low energy throughout the day, goes and says, man, I need an IV drip. Well, you know what? Let's cut back on the alcohol. Yeah. And let's increase our intake of water and salt throughout the day through a electrolyte mix such as Element or Redmond. Mm-hmm. And let's see if those things start to fix themselves without going and having to spend $400 every 2 weeks on an IV drip. Yeah. Or let's you go to the guy, the same thing, or the girl that is sitting at dinner and is intermittent fasting all day long, feels lightheaded, is lethargic, and at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock breaks their fast and then eats right up until the time they go to bed. But yet they wake up, they're like, I can't lose weight. I'm doing intermittent fasting. I've done this. I've hit a plateau. I can't sleep well. I don't have energy. My testosterone's low because I'm getting all stressed over this. Well, what if we actually changed our intermittent fasting window, stopped eating 3 hours before bed, didn't eat 3 hours after we got up, and we sleep for 7 hours a night? We created a natural 13, 14-hour fasting window that's based on circadian rhythm that gets us into deeper levels of sleep, that increases certain hormonal balances again, and allows the body to naturally regulate in a much more powerful way. And HRV is naturally going to increase. Oh my gosh, we've done it naturally.
Yeah.
Now, without a doubt, and the way we work with clients, yes, we'll do the cellular testing. Yes, we'll do the genetics. Yes, we'll do the epigenetics. Yes, we'll do the gut biome paneling. Yes, we'll do the custom supplementation. But those all come after we've set a foundation of heart rate variability and these 8 controllables to drive habits, behaviors, and lifestyle.
Well, yeah, because if you don't, then you're not actually starting from a fact-filled baseline, right? So because there's too many other external circumstances or external impactors that are impacting. Like I've noticed that if I have an alcoholic beverage, I don't sleep well.
Yeah.
Like, and I'd never thought about it before. You go out and hang out with friends and whatever, and have a couple of glasses of wine. And then, you feel tired after, like when your head hits the pillow, you knock yourself out fast, but then you wake up 3 hours later, you can't go back to sleep.
Totally. There's, another example of alcohol, like I just gave the one with food, is I was recently keynoting out in LA, and typically I'm really good with, like, when I change time zones. If I'm there for less than 48 hours, I'll stay on my native time zone. If I'm there for greater than 48 hours, then I will switch immediately to the time zone I'm in, but I won't eat when I'm typically sleeping on my native time zone. But given the situation, I keynoted. They kept us around, and then they had dinner at 7 o'clock, which is typically 10 o'clock my time.
Yeah.
And so I ate a lighter dinner, but then they brought out, they had a little surprise celebration for us, for my wife and I. And so we ate again at like 8:30 for like a dessert, right? Like, it was the quote unquote gluten-free, lactose-free cake. And now that's 11:30 my time. And so I go back to the hotel, and that night, and didn't overeat, didn't do anything, but I'm eating so close to bedtime, and I'm like, man, I just can't sleep. I fell asleep. I felt like I was in a light sleep all night. The drop of it, like if a dime dropped, I would hear it and I would wake up, or if the wind blew the wrong way, I'd hear it and wake up. I woke up in the morning after 8 hours of sleep, was in bed by 10 o'clock Pacific time, woke up at 6, 8 hours of sleep. I felt like I'd slept an hour. I felt terrible. And that's the reality that so many of us live in every single day. Is there's certain habits and behaviors that we're executing that we actually don't know are hurting us, that are holding us back from realizing the full benefits of what we can get. We still might be like, and people might be doing the cold plunging, they might be doing the peptide therapy, the red light, the saunas, the continuous glucose monitors, all these like advanced tools, but they haven't looked after the base. And so even though they're doing these things, they're barely getting back to where they should be, because you do peptides, you're like, man, I feel really good for about a week. Yeah. Or you do this hormone therapy, man, I feel really good until I need another hormone shot. Well, that's not how that's supposed to work. You're just using it as another drug. That's all we're doing it. We're using it as a pharmaceutical, masking what's actually happening, because we're living in fake health, disease-free, but symptom-full. These symptoms are not dissipating. They're still there. We're just masking them. Yeah. We have to get to the root cause, which is a behavior, lifestyle, and behavior change that really needs to be shifted. And when we can use heart rate variability as a indicator, are we pulling stress away from the body and allowing more sympathetic and parasympathetic rhythm? So stress, fight or flight, or rest, digest, relax states to be in better balance with one another? we're giving our body more space, more capacity, more ability to do better, longer, more impactful work, which is what we're looking for at the end of the day. Because I was talking with a pastor right before this, actually, about this exact concept. And he goes, Justin, I cannot tell you how many funerals I've done in the last 2 months of people that are dying 20, 30, 40 years before they should have, just simply due to bad stewardship of their earthly being.
Well, I think it's most often it's because it's like, I'm huge in the entrepreneurship space as far as helping early startup entrepreneurs and people scale their businesses and stuff like that. And 9 times out of 10, the reason they can't break through a certain ceiling or even start to fall backwards is because of ignorance. Like they just don't know what they don't know.
Yep.
Once they know what they should know, then only about 60%, 65% will then begin to apply what they now know, and start getting traction. The others, it's almost like, it's just like, it's going back to that thing. I know what I should do, but I really haven't done it. Or I'm really not like, you can't seem to get them to own it and really commit. Which is another reason why I want to encourage everybody to kind of follow what you're doing as well. Where can everybody find out more about you and maybe learn more about HRV and all the programs you're doing? Because you're leading this industry in this space.
So before I mention that, can I talk about what you just mentioned just for like 20 seconds?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Because you're so right. Is a lot of it is ignorance, but a lot of it comes back, and we have to take ownership of it and step up and like say, hey, this is not where I'm at. But a lot of it comes to this space because there's so much confusion. One day one person says this, and then the next day another person says that. And I was on, I won't name names, but I was listening to, like, it's a massive podcast, and they had a guest on one week, and they talked about health and wellness and what needs to happen and what they need to do. And the host was agreeing and like, yes, this is really good. This is really good. And promoted their book. And then 2 weeks later, they had another person on talking about health and wellness, talking about the exact opposite thing that they talked about 2 weeks previous. And the host was like, yes, this is great. I love it. And agreed with everything. And then promoted their book. That's the world we live in. And so my goal and what we want to do and what we want to help you with is we want to empower you. We want to create competence. The moment you have competence and understand the language of your body, that gives you the clarity for what it is that you need to do. And that clarity ultimately generates the confidence within you to take powerful action that then becomes consistent. And consistent action is what yields change that we're wanting, that's sustainable, which ultimately allows you to be in that confusion elimination space where you're no longer confused. You've got your time energy shield around you that leaves you in a really powerful position to take ownership once you are competent.
Yeah, dude, that's so good. That is so good. I always like to say that competence leads to confidence.
100%.
It's the reason you don't have confidence is because you don't have competence in the thing that you're doing. So therefore you're going to be like, oh, should I do this? Should I not do it? Anywho.
Yeah, it's like if you're driving a car really fast down the road and there's a Y in the road, you're driving at 100 miles an hour. You got your beautiful Ferrari, Steven, that you're just like crushing, right? You're cruising 100 miles an hour going down. And then you've got one person on your left, one person on your right. The person here is going, hey, go left, go left, go left, go left. The other person goes, no, go right, go right, go right, go right. What do? You probably slow down. You keep going straight. And then there's a point where you're just going to have to stop. And you never make a decision because you don't know what to do. You do one thing, you do really like it. That's what the world that we're living in is health and wellness space is. People are so confused. They're like, well, I tried this for a week and it didn't work, so it mustn't be right. And I tried this for 2 weeks and I got a result, but now it's not working. And like, I don't know what to do anymore. Let's just break it down to what your body needs. Let's get consistent. Let's get competent. Let's create that clarity for you so that you can ultimately get some consistency and create change. And that confusion is left behind. Yeah, so,
dude, that's so good. Where can somebody find out more about you?
Yeah. So ownitcoaching.com. That's where you'll be able to find all information about this that you need. There's a lot of information on HRV there, a lot of information on the controllables, understanding where you can really start. I put out tons of content on this on my Instagram page at Justin Roth, ROETH. and super active there. So be sure to say hello and stop by. And if there's any way we can help or provide clarity and questions, I answer all my DMs. So feel free to reach out.
Rock on, dude. Dude, thank you so much for coming on today. Seriously, man. I so appreciate what you guys are doing over there for sure.
No, I appreciate you and just your heart. And I know I came and spoke on your stage, and I've done some events at your facility, which is, if you guys are hosting events, you have to show up and reach out to Steven, because his facility is second to none. And I just really appreciate your heart and your sense of genuineness, if that's a word,
thanks,
your
dude.
genuity. So it's been a pleasure.
Rock on, man. We'll see you again on the soon.
Appreciate you.
All right. See ya. I hope you liked that video. And if you did, make sure you check out this next video right here.
When you're in those really difficult moments, when you really have nothing but yourself and your grit and your resilience to go by, you realize what's important to you, what your values and principles are, and who you really are.